Hello. We got sound? Okay. Hello. Welcome to the 2026 Annual Conference and Book Fair in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm Kenyatta Rogers, a member of the AWP Board of Directors. I'm a Chicago native. I'm a writer. I do poems, Cave Canem Fellow. I do essays, and I run a creative writing program. And I've been on the board now for 5 years. The Association of Writers and Writing Programs is a small but mighty nonprofit organization that amplifies the voices of writers and the academic programs and organizations that serve them, all while championing diversity and excellence in creative writing. I'm a member of the board of directors, but first and foremost, I'm a member of AWP, and I think for myself, I can speak that AWP has brought me a type of community and networking and bonding and just intellectual enlightenment and artistic expression that I would have never had in a lot of other places. We invite you to become a member today. We're delighted to bring today's event, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank our literary partner, Furious Flower, for today's event. Let's give a round of applause for that, yeah? And their support of the conference. Our literary partners and sponsors allow AWP to present these extraordinary literary events and help us to keep our conference affordable and accessible. Just a few reminders: please respect marked and reserved seats for attendees with accessibility needs. Please give the authors about 10 minutes or so after the presentation to get to the book signing table, and before approaching them to have your book signed. I will also be out there to help with any logistics with that. And thank you, and it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome Lauren Alleyne, who will introduce this fantastic event.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. We up? We good? Oh. So wonderful to be here. Welcome to Black Poets and Their Fictions, presented by Fierce Flower Poetry Center at James Madison University. A few reminders before we begin. For those needing or wishing to follow along, written text that is sort of accurate, please see Jasmine over there. She has accessibility copies and she will bring them to you. Please make sure that the space is left open for wheelchairs, remain clear of chairs and other barriers, treat service animals as working animals, and don't attempt to distract or pet them. Be aware of those with chemical sensitivities and watch out for that. And be aware that your fellow attendees may have invisible disabilities. Do not question anyone's use of an accommodation, especially and including chairs reserved for those with disabilities. So housekeeping out of the way, I'm Lauren K. Alleyne. I'm the Executive Director of the Fierce Flower Poetry Center, the nation's first academic center dedicated to the study of Black poetry. We are housed at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Our mission is to celebrate the work of Black poets, educate students and audiences about the contributions of Black poets to American and world letters, and to preserve that legacy for future generations. We offer a host of programs, including a reading series that is both in person in Harrisonburg and available on our YouTube channel for public access, the Fierce Flower Annual Poetry Prize for Emerging Poets, The Fight and the Fiddle, which is a quarterly journal, online journal that features a Black poet, and a publicly accessible archive of readings and conversations of Black poets housed at JMU libraries. Our most distinctive event is the Fierce Flower Poetry Conference, which is held every 10 years and brings together Black poets, scholars of Black poetry, and poetry lovers from around the world. The first conference, the genesis of Fierce Flower, was held in 1994. And in September 2024, we held our fourth decennial conference, The Worlds of Black Poetry. Were you there? Let me hear you if you were. Let me hear if you wish you were. Today's panel extends the conference theme, The Worlds of Black Poetry. I'm so excited to be hosting these three exceptional poets who have recently ventured bravely into the debut works of fiction. We'll hear them read, and we'll have a wonderful and dynamic conversation about Black imagination, world building, their experiences with the craft, complications and rewards of engaging self, history, and language across genre. Please help me welcome Rachel Eliza Griffiths, Canisia Lubrin, and Phillip B. Williams. I'll introduce each of them. They're sitting in a different order, but y'all know who you are, and you will see clearly as well. Rachel Eliza Griffiths is an award-winning poet, visual artist, and novelist. Her work has been published in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Paris Review, the Kenyon Review, and a host of others. She's the author of Miracle Arrhythmia, The Requited Distance, and her third collection of poetry, Mule and Pear, was selected for the 2012 Inaugural Poetry Award by the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. Her fourth collection, Lighting the Shadow, was selected as a finalist for the Balcones Poetry Prize, the Phyllis Wheatley Book Award in Poetry, and her debut novel, Promise, was a Kirkus Reviews and Chicago Public Library Best Book of the Year. Her memoir, The Flower Bearers, was published this past January. Welcome, Rachel Eliza.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to leap right into it because of time. Time is a thing, as we know. I will begin with a poem from my fifth collection of poetry. Can you hear me? I feel like I'm looking at this mic and want to look at you all. And is that okay? Yeah. But I'm on a mic.
We're good. Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm okay. All right, we good. Great. I'm going to begin with the title poem from Seeing the Body, and then I will read a brief excerpt from my debut novel, Promise. Seeing the Body. She died, and in the spring of her blood, I remember my mother's first injury. Surprise of unborn petals curling red, then dark around her wrist. Some fruit she cut, some onion, some body with skin and sharp seeds. She fed me. She lived us and I. She held we and I. She kept speaking with those flowers falling from her blood, taking her across the sky to death. I remember her voice like a horn I never want to pull out of my heart. In the next life, which is here and here, I gather every mouth that ever sang my mother's blues. She burned and she talked back hard at God. Oh, my mother, she danced unbroken too. Veil of grief on my back, opening into something black I wear. A life of flesh, like a petal or fruit or burning. I've carried everything, and I'm tired. My mother survived and but she did not live. She told me nothing and she was waiting the entire time. How does the elegy believe me? Together we crossed the sky. There was a gate and we walked through the world like that. She wrote we and she was last or never seen and brown eyes without life opened her eternity when the air in her stopped. And she was last seen dying. She was too silent for the first time in her life. The spring of my mother's blood hot. In God, the dark, dark, beyond the closed door that won't move again. And I'm imagining the prose that I'm reading as just one of those tracks where this part just picks up with what you just heard. It's the very kind of closing lyric of Promise, and it gives nothing away. I ran to the back of the truck and began to pound on it with my fist. The fabric fell away from my head. Under a growing canopy of fireflies, I tore up handfuls of dust. Clawed dirt, shuffling painfully towards me, Jenny tried to throw her heavy arms around me. Sweat beaded my throat, twisting around my neck as I thrashed. I threw my cries into the dust. The taillights of the truck flickered red, and worried that I'd knock my grandmother down, I sank down in the dust. Across the gravel of my grandmother's yard, Mama's flesh was carried out of our lives. In the dust of my people, the steel of my life strikes the flint of my memory. Here is the glowing shirt my father once wore over his bones. The education that fit around his ribs like armor. I remember his patience and how he taught me to take my time with every test, every story. I am my father's patience. Here is Mama escaping through the window, her suffering dissolving in the low yellow moonlight of the world, while faraway stars blaze like oceans. I am the light in the bones beneath the sea, rising to meet the sky. I remember what those bones believed, the songs inside shells, the children who became coral, pearls, and anchors. Do you see how the hard land glittered around the foundation of the house my mother and my father built for me? Do you remember the blood? I am Theodore, Alma, Calliope. Do you see how my great-grandparents kissed those school children they could not save from their dream? Do you remember our blood? There is a memory so old, it has known better than to trust us with its full face. I am in the blood of that, the flare of firelight my great-grandfather admired before the white men shot him through his eyes. I am the eternity he cradled in his arms as he crossed. I am the smoke curling from the earth where indigo headstones wait for justice and sublime, undisturbed rest. I am but one voice, and there are countless dark women who live in the rivers, ashes, moons, and oceans. I remember when they rolled my name against the stars until I expanded. I remember what I was before flesh, the blood of unafraid loving, of love and its afterlife.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Thank you, Rachel. Gorgeous. Canisia Lubrin is the author of 5 books, including The Disgraphist, The World After Rain, and Bright Machine, which is forthcoming next year. Her honors include a 2021 Wyndham Campbell Prize, an OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, the Griffin Poetry Prize, the Derek Walcott Prize, and the Danuta Gleed Literary Award. Twice a finalist for the Governor's General Literary Award, she is Associate Professor and Coordinator of the University of Guelph's Creative Writing MFA and a Poetry Editor at McClellan and Stewart Penguin Random House, Canada. Code Noir, Lubrin's debut fiction and winner of the 2025 Carol Shields Prize for Fiction, has 59 drawings by celebrated visual artist Torquaze Dyson. Born in St. Lucia, Lubrin lives in Whitby, Canada. Welcome, Canisia. I tried.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for coming. I will read first from The World After Rain. I am not where the poet who oversees my life will go. I am told this is another matter better left to the portraits of a right foot, a wall on which what is lost survives. Say again that the trees and the birds will outlast us. Say again that the frantic arguments of this meddled species are less bewildering than our charge of blooding the taste of bread. Whatever, then, give whatever is left to the milestones, the timeshares ahead. The man who'll die of old age before he knows himself. The familial motion hooked on looking back at all the blackening English vowels. How to lengthen our days, to thicken their geometry with hummingbird's wing, with Marmite's smear, woman, and the careening shelves of books stacked in 1906, each with their own maddening symmetry, along a summit and bridged with black forests. Loves then, astonish now, the minute hand that pulls us forward from the black pew, where too narrow we've been tethered to that old story of a mountain road, just ours, to the long days folding into black, as though some lines with fruit in them rushed us into being, only in this last hour. This room is talisman, and here I think with a black language summary of centuries, that even where I go, I have not gone. Time rusting, solid and fume. I am in want of something fluid in the metals of killing industry, thrusting you open, me against strange depths, at 8 a.m. on a Monday, new to tinnitus and, while I am prone to starving, this new again July lets you address me. L'ombre volte, me, street flat, with your one mouth full of screws for teeth, soft on my neckline. I've spent this flawless privacy in lieu of redacted mowing eternally our plastic lawn. Now so, who'll watch the way I disappear? Now so, who'll scatter your words between borders? You, water suspended between earth bridges. You and I, above a family drum, segue 5 centuries. Heart chronic, a beat drop, once every decade, quick as the dead. Thank you. And now I'll read from Code Noir, which contains all 59 articles of King Louis XIV's edict of the same name, Code Noir, which were the legal framework in which slavery was practiced. Article 6. Let us enjoin all our subjects, of whatever quality and condition they may be, to observe the day of Sundays and feast days, which are kept by our subjects of the Catholic, Apostolic, and Roman religion. Let us forbid them to work, nor to make their slaves work on said days, from the hour of midnight until the other midnight, on the cultivation of the earth, the manufacture of sugars, and all other works on pain of fine and arbitrary punishment against the masters and confiscation of both sugar and slaves, who will be surprised by our officers at work. The story is called Earth in the Time of Billie Holiday. February 24, 1942, was our last day in the City of Angels. Combat was nothing like what they promised. It commanded no serious loyalty from me or CM, though it did have a first taste, a sound, the rapid sounds of an illusion coming apart. CM did not pay my gripes about war much mind, and he could not appreciate why my hand shook on that trigger. But he still agreed that we should run off, far away from here, and risk the dishonor that made no fuss about us anyway. because some people got to be a nasty kind of clean. They could play the pastimes of country and new lives, any of them as they pleased, while others of us got to kill and be killed for it. Plus, this rule breaking involved both me and Siam, so it would be a thrill to have a dirty joy in the core of other disturbances. The road beneath our convoy made a game of lurching, like a pre-warning, fading, only to start up again, over and over. But nothing could be avoided when the air raid sirens began breaking out across the city as abruptly as anything the governments were doing. We could still speak at our normal pitch and volume because we were so used to a different kind of loud, one we could not compete with. General Mitch, the new officer, was making a clamor of his orders, and the rest of us made a half-serious attempt to pay attention. Then we saw it, the flash, the sharp light appearing and gone, the cloud darkening in a sky of bright white and blue. "The Japs are here," someone said. "I don't have no reason to die like this," CM told me. I noticed the oiliness of his face, how it threatened to collect all the horror in him, set us all ablaze. And I would have no objections, the last of anything cheery in me now gone. "The poorer you are, the richer to die, brother," I said to CM. And look at us. Don't we been known death before now? It got some deep gashes, some big yawns, lively for any one of us. It will be a small blessing after this. The soldiers around us peppered the sky with bullets. Look how no combat death row done forgot us on this road. "I never knew they could send prisoners on death row out to war," said CM. Thousands of bullets took to the air, aimed at the imaginations of men. And then traffic jams in hospitals looked the same. Twisted metal and bones, exit wounds, blood and death. After arrived by late afternoon. Death had not shown us its kindness. Billie Holiday was on the radio. A sultry, meddling fiddle cut back against the orca heat of Billie's voice, and all of us, entranced, came undone. At dusk, young mothers with hair in curlers and troops on military bases surrounding Los Angeles crowded the roadways. Nobody slept that night. How can anyone imagine sleep as possible in a time like this? Even when sleep was the most honest thing between us and the White House, or between us and all the symbols of the threat already gathering theories against us for itself. It was too soon, people said. After the surprise attack at Pearl Harbor, they said. It was a false alarm, they said. Well, it was aliens, they said. The internment camps would soon follow. When others make their pleas to forgive such dark skills in people, there's always a man behind a curtain, as though he was the only symptom of the thing you let yourself remember. See him will find the streets, will kneel at the crosswalk, will crawl as he speaks a word, muted as though spoken into a conch shell. Still, this word will sound like an explosion, and it will be hard to contain. And the police will find CM and place a hand on his shoulder. The noise of them will disturb the guests in the Blue Room, where Davis and Coltrane will be commiserating with each other over a horn and a sax, playing a note about a helicopter, a saudade of salt water against a never-known law meant to keep them, to keep us, somewhere else, with Simone at her piano. Me and Siem were separated in the aftermath, or just in the after. I did not see Siem leave, but I imagined him up a mountain somewhere, far from the city of angels, much better off for leaving all this monstrosity behind him. Not that anyone could just up and leave a house built out of war and not take some evidence of it with them. Not in this life. In my solitude, sang the voice already holding everything else we'd lost. A complete calendar in my ear as it left the radio that afternoon in February. I could think of nothing except that if we did not live, the reason for a war like this could never make sense. not to me, and damn anyone else for trying. If I let down my gun among these 498 others in the squad, reach for the helmet on my head, will we find a hat to hang up on a hook instead? One more time to sit at a table with Billie Holiday and sip something fiery sweet in a short glass to bring our fresh experience of war to a close. Billie, I'd say, I'm sorry you have to sing that song at all. Thank you.
We're going to talk about so much, y'all. But last, we have Phillip B. Williams. Phillip B. Williams is a Chicago, Illinois native. He's the author of the poetry collection Thief in the Interior, which was the winner of the Kate Tufts Discovery Award and a Lambda Literary Award, and also Mutiny, which was a finalist at the Penn Faulkner Award and the winner of a 2022 American Book Award. Williams is also the recipient of a Whiting Award and fellowships from the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard and the National Endowment for the Arts. His debut novel, Hours, was a finalist for the James Tate Black Prize. He is a professor of creative writing at Rice University and founding faculty member at Randolph College. Phillip? Hi.
Mic fell out my pocket because I'm getting thick. Did you see it when I walked up? I'll open with a reading from Ours, the first chapter. I knew that I had to read, but there was someone, because my books aren't here, who was disappointed that they couldn't get a book. So I gave them my copy, forgetting that I needed it to read. So you're welcome. Chapter 1, Blood and Light. Nearly 2 centuries before the boy who was shot dead at the intersection of First and Bank stood up in his own blood and spoke his name as if it were given to him. There was a town named Ours, founded by a mysterious and fearsome woman right where the boy had been shot. But perhaps this story begins centuries before then, at the muddy waters of the Apalachicola River, or further back on a ship named the Divider, carrying those misunderstood to be the future of slavery to the Western world. To begin in any of those 3 places would lead back here to this boy, age 17, fresh out of his junior year in high school, a bottle of orange Fanta rolling and emptying onto the street just feet away from his body, from which blood spilled until it stopped, until the boy with his closed eyes opened them with a new mind and breath and understanding that shook him. He had been lying in the middle of the street for 3 hours, with police tape squaring him off from his neighbors, friends, and family. The whole hood had rocked at the sound of the bullets popping off. Then he dropped and they all gathered, hymnless and weathered, to see yet another one of their youngest take his last breath. But he stood, his wounds no more than memories as he touched himself where he had been shot, a resonance of pain still there until it too departed. The smell of burnt cornbread in the air that someone had abandoned so that he wouldn't have to lie there for hours alone. Yes, they had all left something behind to stand in that street together, blocked off from touching him and told to back up, had it yelled at them as though they were to have as little care and consideration for the boy as the ones who had shot him. He dusted himself off and looked around at the faces looking back at him. What the fuck, my nigga? Peeling from a mouth, astounded, into a beautiful circle. The whole block went quiet except for that question, and the loud suddenly sparked up in the crowd despite the cops right there. But who could give a fuck now when the dead have risen? And he heard his name screamed from someone in the crowd, the voice bright and familiar, but a part of him didn't recall exactly who had said it. He had 2 minds now, one in the future and one from the past. To begin this journey, move backward. The boy's body returns to the hot asphalt, the orange soda slides back into the bottle, and the blood back into the boy's warming body. Then the boy's corpse rises, and the bullets spin out from the right lung, the neck, the back of the head, the left hamstring, the right buttock, the right triceps, the left scapula, His corpse becomes a living hymn as flecks of bone restructure and re-enter the red-black wound. The broken wet resealed, the white meat sucked back into unbroken muscle, uncooked fat, and closing behind the retreat of the backward flying bullet. The air the bullets once displaced returns from the curve of its displacement. The silver bullets return into the black gun like an unspeakable organ moving back into its dark element. The explosion of gunfire, now the sound of wind hissing, then roaring, then suddenly silent. And the brown finger lifts from its trigger. The boy with his back to the police as the Fanta rises back into his pocket. And further back, weeks ago, the boy is asleep in bed, and a small circle of light leaves his body. The legend begins where that light leads. At the end, the boy may teach you his name. I'll read a poem from a book that is not out yet. It's coming out in July. Thank you. That was kind of you. Morrisonian. In 7 days, the procurers of doom will kneel in a mound of velvet petals, rose-red plumes. Patient ancestors make room beneath tragic men. Flight lifts, then settles into the perfect snow. White won't last here. Not in the casket of a guitar's hold that is a boy's eyes carving into fear. Not in the pile of men in piles of cold drawing vivi with their barbered hair. Once there was a story where stories refused to barter with the tongue. Now a bright fuse has lit a path from canon to the blues, to the heavens, a fusillade of wings, chuku bound, the people could fly. My God, it's brighter in August these days. Let's sing that the worshipers of doom will see how God said good after 7 days and ended their reign just as quick. These blissed August days, these rivers belching black dresses mended to evening. Let its billowed malaise be token for my mother, dream augur, who knew 7 ways to say bitch under her breath as though singing underwater, and the children whose chains still glow down there. Now hear her singing, children, children, go where I send thee, and how shall I send thee? Her dead brother's shoe print in perfect snow, her dead father's soft laughter in the breeze. Tragedy, tragedy. Those who love ghosts summon ghosts in the morning. Troubadours of salt, griots gather our names from boats. Bones became salters on history's shore. My mother's brother died, intestines curled in a bag. Charlie Parker blew robins from his record player. Black vinyl whirled into a world he could downright die in. And where did he learn how to myth himself free? Giggling at me, his guts in a bag. What gives this life its lore? Fiction is breath, like a breeze of laughter from my dead dad. Is this the paradise that never comes but through the lily's rot? An empty dress or ribbon in a river. Skin undone in its bow. Is this the promise of flesh, that it will break clean like a ghost-thrown dog and still stay put? Still in this paradise, retrograde and certain countenance. Fog unspooling from my cold-skinned uncle's eyes. My father disappeared in rocks of snow, his wan face blade carved in a violet tone. Can a man be a burning dress that knows the devil's silhouette? A bag of bones hangs from my memory like an earring in servitude to gravity. I kneel in a house of 100 dogs, hearing the one bell for the end of our days peal. All 4 grand folks deceased, my grief standing like horses, standing like men, fugitive into dusk. What chapter speaks of branding love into a corpse that cannot love? Give Shadrach to fire to learn the failure of fire. Some folks die to keep others from dying. My mother saw the future and still made a family. Ancestors. By the book's end, everybody is dead, serious in the makings of love. See, there was a novel in my mother's womb, and in my unborn throat, there was a sea. Thank you.
Morris, tell me.
Y'all hear me? Oh, there we go. Hey, y'all, let's give it one more time for all of our readers. Amazing. All right, so I'm going to start with the softball human question, because y'all is poets. You are poets, and you ventured into the land of more words called fiction. What called you there? What called you, Phillip?
I started as a fiction writer.
No, we claim you poet.
You can claim me. I mean, if we think about chronology, we take on the title of what comes out first. So my poems came out first. I was accepted first into the world and known in the world first as a poet. But I had been writing fiction and poetry at the same time, and I thought the fiction would come out first. It took 16 years for me to finish ours. And so there was always this juggle between this idea of telling a story at length and then telling a story in a kind of microcosm of song, the lyric meditation, musicality, language, but that's also in the fiction. And so for me, the distinction that is made when it comes to the genre is only made noticeable because of the timeline, if that makes sense.
It sure does. Go. Maybe just go down the road.
Just go down the, okay. So I'm a little bit of Phillip as far as, I mean, I always wrote both of them at the same time. And now I'm adding memoir to that. So, but I mean, I always wrote fiction at the same time as poetry, and then I would throw visual art in there for me as well. But I feel like when I hear about genre, it's more external for me than internal. So I feel like it's external ways to make a map, and internally there's a lot less. It's much more fluid. It's not binary at all, and it's whatever is the message or the transmission that almost dictates the form it might take. But then I might put it in like multiple genre to see, is this a photograph? Is this a film? Is this a poem? Is this a novel? Is it a memoir? And then just like play. So I would say that.
Okay.
Similarly, I don't play by genre first. You know, it's like the Latin Americans. It's like, what do you mean genre? Here's a story. And here it is, a bunch of lines or a paragraph of a condensed something. But I did write poetry later on. I was terrified of writing poetry because I always thought it was something close to the gods and I shouldn't touch it. But I should read it and I should delight in it. And so it took a very long time for me to actually say that here I wrote a poem. I would call them when I was a teenager, I would call them songs. I had no problem doing that. But to say, here's a poem, that took a really long time. But I was always with story, you know, and for me it's language doing its thing.
I love that idea, and I'm curious about then the relationship between genre, right, as an external thing, and I guess the idea of power. What does it mean to claim or to reject the ideas and convention of genre, right? And again, because this is Black poets and their fiction, we're going to bring that lens into it as well. What does that mean? What's the resonance of that or the function of that for y'all as Black writers?
I think imagination and innovation, that, I mean, it's just like celestial, like the Black imagination, the innovation of Black folks, just, I already have the crown and permission to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I'm going to do it. I think there's probably maybe a thing that I learned writing a memoir, which is permission. But I just think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's what first came to my mind, was like imagination, innovation, community, but conversation and dialogue, even silence, you know? I think silence is something too. But I think there's just so much available as transmission when you are moving across genre. And I wonder about forces that be in the past, or like, you're a poet or you're a novelist, or I don't know what you are, versus now it seems almost a time thing where now it seems more acceptable to say, like, I can wear many hats at once. Sometimes I think you need to listen to yourself too, of like intuitive. I guess I would add intuition to imagination and innovation. I might fail a few times, which I like actually, because there's still some seeds in that, but failing helps me then eliminate what it isn't. And then I'm like, oh, this is definitely not a poem, or this thing I thought is a novel is now a short story, or now this thing that I thought was a short story, it's a prose poem, you know, or this poem is actually a photograph. Go make it, see how that works out. Yeah.
Sure.
You know, I've never had, I know with the Spider-Man.
I'm trying to look, I sat in the wrong place.
I've never had a conversation with genre in my whole life, you know. When I think of genre, I think of the critic doing their job, right? They make it make sense according to certain conventions to give it a certain legibility. For me, form is more important, actually, right? So I need formal clarity in order to do the thing that I'm trying to do. In order to take everything that Eliza just spoke about into a kind of shape, into a kind of coherence, I need formal clarity. And for me, form is about function, right? So the thing functions as XYZ, then it's a poem. It functions as ABC, then it's a sculpture, then it's a novel, then it's a memoir, you know what I mean? So I find that a lot more generative for me to do the work honestly, and I might pull from these various conventions that we call genre in order to make the thing function the way that it ought to function. For me, as a Black woman who descends from formerly enslaved people, who sees the world in a really queer way and who inhabits that in its multiple registers. Sometimes the conventional thing just doesn't do what I want it to do, you know? And I'm very happy to step outside of convention, which is why form is louder. Form is more important.
Can you repeat the part about Blackness?
Just, hold on. Let me see. Oh, is there a resonance or function of that resisting or abiding by genre as a Black writer?
Oh, I don't know. I can't speak to the Black, like the idea of Blackness, but in my Black home,
You can.
in my Black house, we had music playing all the time. And so if every life is a story, my story has always been punctuated by sound, by a kind of soundtrack that either my mother would lay out or my uncle. So I was listening to the blues when I didn't know what the blues were, when I didn't know what Wang Dang Doodle could possibly mean. But it was, it was happening at the barbecues. Mother would, play all kinds of jazz from Kenny G to Miles Davis. My sister's a hip hop person. And so I don't know a story without a soundtrack. I don't know how to tell a story without the kind of what I think of as the improvisation of, we're just gonna put this song on and see what happens. I think that's part of it. They're just going to the page and not having any expectations, but just seeing what happens. And so I begin with sound, be it a story or even if I don't know what it is, I know how I want it to sound. And so all of my stories or my poems are formed primordially from a kind of a grunt or a rhyme or an utterance, I think is the word I'm looking for, because I just can't understand language without there being melody and harmony.
That's amazing. Thank you. I kind of want to keep going off of that because one of the ways that I think about genre is an intersection of time and craft. And so I think that you mentioned form, you mentioned music, and I'm curious about manipulating or working with or within the construct of time. You all read so lyrically, which again, I don't necessarily attribute to prose, right? To the fiction, that the sound is the thing. I think of fictional time as pretty progressed, linear, et cetera. And of course, there are other things. I'm a poet. I'm guessing what y'all do with the fictions, okay? But lyric time is so much more malleable and movable. But then y'all do some amazing things in your fiction around time and vice versa. So just throwing that out there as an element or thing that you work with in both and multiple genres. Talk about time to me. Can you see you look like you're ready?
I guess I should stay ready, huh? Time and genre. I think the temporal is always important for a writer, right? There are these generic conventions that rely on time in a really explicit way, like if you're going to write historical fiction, like Eliza did with Promise, and like Phillip did with Hours, and which I do a little bit of in Code Noir. Even if I am working from a historical archive, the book is contemporary in the main, right? There are some historical bits of fiction in there, but most of it is contemporary. And then I even have some kind of futuristic things, speculative elements, right? And I think for me, I value this sense of speculation even more so than, having a kind of rigid sense of time. I like the ways that time and place intersect. Because that is really about the thickness of our experience of the world. In a place and time, you can bring the kind of multi-directional aspect of the imagination into the work, right? Because the imagination can move in a 360 direction. It can go any which way, even in the same compressed space of text, right? So in the same system of text, you can have something happening in the past as a flashback, something in the current moment, and you could speculate about something that we call the future. So with Code Noir, for instance, I wanted to have that 360 view of Black life and Black living and the livingness of our encounter with each other as a way to put a middle finger up to the to the colonial, the master narrative, right? That inscribes a really limited corridor for us to stay inside of. They could not imagine that we could exceed, or that we would exceed, or that we were always in excess of that really small, minuscule imagination that made us property, or that can say something like your property. So in my own view, I take from poetry the way that time works in that really fluid way. If we're not talking about these strict metrical forms, we're talking about that improvisation and that jazz and that blues and that compa and that reggae and that soca and that calypso and that fluid sense of being inside of an expression that can exceed the strictures of its time. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
I love the excess of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, time as a poet is often about breath, how I breathe through lines. And it's also improvisational because it's almost impossible for me to read a poem physically embodied in my body the same exact way. But when I'm editing a poem, like Phillip, like my ear is my editor, but I have to hear how I'm breathing. So I'll often record myself and I'm like, you really struggling on this adverb, get it out. Like so that you cannot keep it. And so there's like a sense of how do I want someone receiving the poem? How are they going to breathe through it? And have I left space for them? Am I expanding or am I constricting on the line? And so how is the light, the shadow, the breath, the body being invited or excluded in the stanza or in the form of the poem? I think for Promise, which took me a decade to write, I think of time as like pacing, like craft, as far as I'm crafting a novel. And though I'd love to go into like 25 pages on this character, we're not here for that. Like this is not going to be, Middlemarch. This is Promise. So it's like, okay, so pacing, and Promise was very cinematic. A lot of times I had my eyes closed and I would hear a score. I have a whole score in my head and I would type what I would see, what I would feel. My heart would be racing sometimes. Like I actually didn't feel like separated, like I'm in my body at my desk. It was like I'm in northern Maine in the freezing snow and white folks is foolish. Like what's happening here? So, I was in the lighthouse, I was near the sea, I was on the cliffs. I could feel the salt of the air on my skin. And I like to stay close like that to my work. If I start to feel like I'm working, I need to stop. For the memoir, which is kind of, real events in real time, I start in a very specific moment, which is in my wedding day. I pause and then I go back in time, like 17 years to when I first met Camila Aisha Moon. And I show that friendship, and then I return to the wedding day, which is not how it happened. Obviously, I met her first, and then eventually there were other things in my life. But I realized I crafted a lot of the flower bears in the way that I would craft a novel. When I think about my photographs, I can think about time in so many ways because there's a technical device of the camera. How many seconds is this? I can't, in a digital camera, really go backwards. Like with film, I can do like double exposure. I can go back, I can loop over, but also photographs have a frame. They have a form and a concept. Time is pushing against that square as evidence, but also within it is proof of life, proof that here is the one picture. I know I have no picture of my mother as a child, and I'm really angry about that. It's like, here is the photograph. Film is a little bit different because then there's like post-production, there's still editing and things, but the visual way that time can happen, the past, present, and future all can collapse in a photograph because there's a narrator too. I'm sitting here, I'm the director, I'm making the image, I'm witnessing the image. There's a narrative perhaps, or a sound, or a color, or it's abstract, of time frozen inside that. And then there's the future of I will not be here, what's in here will not be here, or maybe it will be, and I don't know who is going to receive it. And that's similar to storytelling. So storytelling is like a marrow or a body that is greater than me, that all of these forms and kind of things all live in it. They're all kind of organs in this greater body that I get to witness. So I think that's some of it, maybe. I don't know. We go to.
I just wonder if time is big enough for Blackness. I feel like Black people are too big for time.
Excess.
I say that something about excess feels negative, like expansive.
I'm just going to throw
and I'm going to take all of them because I can't think of the proper word. And so in ours, where time is a huge part of
absolutely
the plot, there is a point in the novel where Saint, who is this conjure woman who's freed all of these and previously enslaved folks who are in Arkansas and took them to this town just north of St. Louis called ours. And she's using her conjure, which does very strange things to space. And just who she is and how time works around her is, everything's a spoiler, so I'm being annoyingly subtle, but
It's definitely not a spoiler.
I don't know how you get spoiled, really.
Language.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Spoil us.
And so there's a way that she's thinking through some faux doctor who's written this paper in a way that Samuel Cartwright wrote the treatise on drapetomania. And so this other doctor wrote something about this Black concept of time, dead time, meaning that Black people are so small that they can't conceptualize time. And Saint's like, this man is stupid because my very existence has haunted you in a way that is past, present, and is probably going to proceed into the future. And then the way that you think about just our Black bodies is so much smaller than who we are individually and also communally, that this idea of there being a linear mapping makes no sense. So for Saint, we're in a circle. And so we begin, we end, and then we begin again. And so if I'm thinking through time in that way, in as far as how I'm structuring the novel, how it moves back and forth between the immediate present and then a distant past, and then going into the future. And then just in my poems, who knows what's happening in those? There's just, because they're image-based. And so I think the cinematography that you're talking about in your novels happens with me in my novels, but also in my poems, just more quickly. And so when I'm thinking,
time, right?
Right.
Quickly.
Yeah. And so when I'm thinking about how I move through time, it's in thinking that I don't have to move linearly, and nor do I have to think about what are the rules of time, because I'm Black and I don't have to do anything like that.
Also, just to add to, thinking about time, we're talking about like kind of place, but also for me right now, it's like time and grief, that time and grief have this relationship, time and joy, time and desire, time and age, and so time becomes this, I don't know, it's not an engine, it's not exactly a device either, but when you would bind grief to time, definitely not linear. Maybe it's circular, but that circle could be an oval, it could be really small, it could be the size of the pupil in your eye, it's so fascinating. It could be like the circle of your nostril or something, like it's wild. And so as I'm engaging and continue to engage a journey of grief and also healing as a circle or another shape, I don't know what it is yet, but it's interesting to think, particular for me recently when I'm thinking about narratives, whether it be in a poem, I tend to write very elegiac poems. And then there was a moment I reached where I'm like, I'm really tired and exhausted of writing the grief poem for the Black boy who just got shot down. Like, what time is it when this is going to end? And then I'm like, oh, but ancestors, their time, that shape, I don't know that. I'm learning it. So, I think also time attached to imagination, like in your novel. I was about to say all your body of work, but even what's happening too with time and justice. And Cold War. Time and justice.
The word that's coming to mind is alchemy, right? How do those things alchemize in all the different
and time and resistance.
When you're talking about the shape of things, I was thinking it's either concentric circles or maybe even an infinity symbol. In as much as if we're thinking about grief, what is the core of that? And are we moving outside in a larger idea of mourning and then getting closer to ourselves? Or is grief the core and then we're radiating out as we move toward healing? I don't know. And then with the infinity symbol, how can we put two circles together? Because I think there's also a way where, when I'm thinking of grief, I'm always moving forward and then looping right back to the morning, looping right back. And so I'm constantly progressing to what I'm thinking is, oh, I'm at a good space, and then looping back to, oh, I can't believe I lost him, you know. So I'm thinking there might be something but it has to be something that doesn't end. It's not closed off. So even, I mean, a circle has this idea of it being, you know, it's just, if we follow the line, right? But I don't think that's enough, because I want to add movement to that.
Someone said, like, does a circle have to be a line? I don't know.
Okay, now we're getting into,
It's too early in the day. It's too early.
I have so many more questions, but I also want to hear y'all all read again.
oh,
Here, ask me. She said, here, let's do it.
Y'all ready? Or we just doing questions?
Yeah.
well, whatever y'all want to do.
What do we do?
I got my file open right now. So my father passed away when I was 16, and I didn't grieve him until 20 years after that. It was the day before my 36th birthday, and he died of an overdose. And so just moving through in these new poems, and forgiveness, love, forgiveness for myself for not understanding what he was going through, as someone fighting through addiction. So I can read one poem from that. A House is Not a Home, Luther Vandross, Never Too Much, Epic Records, 1981. Father, a tenor so a beggar, a man who knew the rain and that in it he belonged, pining, sky-stretched arms, baby babying another baby into a woman, another baby into a woman, another baby, etc., eventually to me. Who got the body? My dead father's a Jones, a ruckus inside, inhearable even now if my ear to grief serves better than the ever-absent body his fatherhood fled from me, fell into. Thus a choir was made. I too a tenor failing singing to sleep a father wound. Listen, flutter hum, flint hymn, that is need and abandon sparking alive in the blood and unloving pleasure. Who kept my father's renegade feet callousing to and into his last breath? Who found him breathless, a still warm finale? I am his encore. I know addiction's taste. My drug, my own mind against my mind sprint toward proof it can withstand its belief. No one will ever love me. No lust warm hand or kiss hain't cold. Was my father's body as cold as my mind, or still warm as his paraphernalia glistening at his feet? Who found my dead father, and was he smiling, fogged out in ritual, a ceremony crucial to my desertion? Did he remember me in his too high? I miss him, one winged apology, saint of the thin wounds, and mine. When my father died, I dreamt of him in the recesses of his mother's garden, wild strawberries ruby against his fickle hunger. Then the death-light lit absurd with blue. I pray he was found, a pietà on the couch, death-light lit and absurd blue. Bible open on his chest to Corinthians before sliding shut to the floor, and I hope he died with love anchoring his heart a flung open door that in death I may finally enter. Crossing over this side of peace while I cut across the static blood of him, stalled heart, grief mine, his name in my ear echoing from his 4 chambers surrendered rooms. I cross his heart, he crosses over Jordan. Deep river that is his body crossing over. My father has crossed on.
Right. Can you share? Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to read maybe like 2 paragraphs from The Flower Bears. As people keep living, going forward, I am frozen. The blood-polished gears of my grief machine gnash at my veins and thoughts. People tell me 1 day at a time. Do they mean for the rest of my life? The extremity of my deterioration is something I try to hide because I am supposed to be brave. but I worry that my body is preparing for a sudden heart attack, stroke, or cancer. I am skinless. My spirit roams within my body, searching for what was once my turbulent but vibrant home. For 2 years, I overshare. For 2 years, I rarely say anything real. For 2 years, I refuse to dance. For 2 years, I don't trust my voice except when it lies to me about being strong. For 2 years, I deliver a set of vividly raw performances, the sort that actors earn Oscar nominations for, but never win. I drink too much. I have no appetite. I can't sleep without pills. I take prozazine and guanfacine to block circuits in my brain that produce nightmares. I will not heed either rational advice or spiritual wisdom. I have no memory of calling people at 2, 3, 4 a.m. to say hello. I find the idea of peace to be abject and insulting bullshit. I swallow lorazepam, trazodone, hydroxyzine, and gabapentin. I will not fucking leave it alone. It meaning life. In my tears live the questions I never ask Aisha. In my tears live our girl song of salt, dust, clay, breath, and gold. In my tears live the mothers we will never be. In my tears live the things I should have told Aisha. In my tears live the specific ways we could have been more honest. In my tears, grief demands more.
Amen. Amen.
I feel like we could just end here.
Nice try.
Yeah, it was stunning. Other forms of hunting. Soon everybody wanted to know where Trellis went, because everybody wanted to know where Alleyne went. And when you tell this story about the twins, tell it this way. Their mother, Shelley, had bled. Breathing around their soft skulls, she had carried them home after they were born mere minutes apart, 20 years in the past, or exactly 28 years into a future time. She clothed and fed them, corrected and sang to them in more than one language, smelled the coconut oil on their heads, the gardenia on their powdered skins. In this moment, when we meet her in her usual 3 a.m. position asleep on her side, her abdomen facing the bedroom window, which flanked east, her hands were phantom still with the weight of them shifting and expanding through the years. Then the news of the omnibus bill that their own member of parliament, a minister, had designed curled around them and made Shelley rise like dough, made her dizzy with the foreknowledge of a cleave down the middle of some lives. After that moment, she'd hear the news discussed by strangers who walk the earth, wearing their trust of the world like hills, by her friends and her doctor too. Her doctor was a stout woman whose mother was Grenadian and whose father was Brazilian, like Shelley, who was Antiguan, her late husband, who had died in a factory accident in Bristol, had been born elsewhere, in Haiti, to a slender curly-haired woman whose mother was Muslim. When the patrols came, they came first in the afternoon, and then at midnight. It was the 3 a.m. banging on the door that shook Shelley and her children enough to abandon their usual wisdom. One of them could not think fluidly enough through the moment's disorientation to stay in bed, to not stir, to avoid the door. The 4 men at the door had brought handcuffs. They said they were sent by a commissioner. They said both Trellis and Alleyne, born together, would be well in different countries, Antigua and Haiti. At least you won't be separated by entire continents, one of the men joked. And he shut the door of his patrol car with a surety. And Shelley, by that time, was entering her fifth loop of well damn, well damn.
And look at us right on time. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel. Let's give another round of applause to our panelists, Rachel, Canisia, Rachel, Phillip. I invite you to join us. They will be signing books outside. If you want to learn more about Fierce Flower, we're in booth 941. You can also follow us on social media to learn more about our mission and our programs and to keep up with this conversation that will be extending until Fierce Flower 5 in 2034. Thank you so much.